Well, friends, I am so excited to have a new friend here, and we're going to be talking about adoption. We're going to be talking about the hearts of families and how so many of us are struggling with grief and loss. And even if you are not an adoptive family, it'll just give you an awareness of adoptive families, adoptive teens. So, my guest today is Susan TeBos. And Susan, first of all, welcome for being here. And why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself?
Okay, I'm so happy to meet you because we're kindred spirits, adoptive
Mhm.
moms, and I think that's so cool. Yep, I'm an adoptive mom of three kiddos who are now in their early 20s. We just made it out of the teen years.
Yes.
That was interesting and eye-opening, and I grew a lot. So there you have it. Also, I'm an author. I've written a couple books now for the adoption constellation.
Mm,
And I just am really into story and the healing power of story. And this book that we're going to talk a little bit about here today is for both teenagers who have been adopted, either internationally, domestically, through the foster system. It's a collection of 34 stories told to me by adoptees, young adult adoptees from all over the country. And what I wanted to do is just create a collection where, like my kids, when they were teens, I was writing this when
mhm,
they were teens, but my kids, any kids, could go and find kindred spirits, find people who get it and who understand what they might be going through. Um, because we know that our teenagers, that's when the loss surfaces. That's
mhm.
when they start processing hard things. And so that was one reason, that I stepped in there and wrote the book. And then, real quickly, the other reason was I just felt for me as a parent, it was very eye opening and I
Yeah.
learned a lot. So that's kind of
And
the big backstory.
that's so good, and I think it really is that age where they're becoming aware of things when other kids are becoming aware.
Yes.
There's some bullying stories that you have in the book, which is so sad, but mention the title and the subtitle.
Yeah.
For
It's called We've Been There: True Stories,
Mhm.
Surprising Insights, and Aha Moments for Adopted Teens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So good. So I was just having a conversation with one of my daughters who's in her early 20s. So I would say it's like the focus is adoptive teens, but I cannot wait to pass on this book to her. We've
Mhm.
adopted 7 kids. They're currently between the ages of 23 all the way down to 13. So
Yeah.
we have teens, we have those that are in their early 20s. But this conversation I had this morning was I was talking to her and she's like, so I've been talking to my biological mom and she's been adopted from foster care. And I know that she's had contact and for many years she didn't want to. I'm like, oh, cool. Like, tell me about it if you want to. And so I think just knowing that, like, probably for a couple of weeks, she's been, I don't know if I should say something. Should I not say something? And she talked about
Mm.
being invited to go on vacation. I'm like, well, what do you think that would be like? Or how
Mhm.
does that make you feel? And it was just interesting that, whether there's kids that will never talk to or see their biological parent, whether there's kids that will, there's all these concerns, there's all
Mhm.
these worries, there's all these comments from other people, good, bad, all everything in between. So it's just so interesting that just this morning, as we're getting ready, we had this long talk about what it would be like to go on vacation. She's used to going on vacation with us. She's used to our family, and just
Sure.
even her saying, um, my bio mom said that try to talk bad about you, and I said, don't even talk about my mom that way. So, and I'm
Aw.
like, it's so funny. She doesn't even know me, but you know what I mean, because we adopted them from foster care. But
Yeah.
the conversations are there, and
Yeah.
thankfully, that one daughter is very open and willing to talk about that. But we know so many kids aren't, and that's what I loved about your book is that they could read it
Mhm.
and know that other kids have been there. But what gave you kind of the background for why you wanted to put this together in a book?
Well, just like you, having so many kids that were moving through the teen years, it's like they're so stealthy about their emotions and they keep so much to themselves. And as parents, I almost sometimes feel I don't want to say I was blindsided because I've read
Mm,
enough books, but when you're in it and it's real and you start thinking, okay, I have a child who's now been, playing basketball and carving pumpkins, and now he's a teenager and he's raging. And not all
mhm.
kids do this, granted,
Right.
but and you wonder what's behind that. And then recently, just like your daughter talking with you, and in the last couple of years, backing up, our kids were adopted internationally, and we found their birth families. And our daughter was 15 when we found hers, and she didn't want anything to do with it at that time. I don't think she was ready, and
Mhm.
I wasn't sure how to handle that. So I let her have her space. But then within 2 years, she was in a grieving process, just really
Mhm.
experiencing that loss, not only of her birth family, but she found out that her birth father had passed away. And
Mm.
so the book, the reason that these stories are important to other teenagers is quite often they don't they isolate themselves. I'm not sure why. I don't know the psychology behind it because I'm just a mom. But
Yeah.
after having all this experience, I know each one of my kids kind of held things close to their hearts. And I think it was with my daughter. It took me the third one. So I'm going to confess, it took me to get to my third child to realize that I need to be intentional and stepping into this and walking alongside her. And I started thinking, okay, what if I gathered stories from other
Mm.
people who have gone through this or gone through a number of things, whatever they've gone through. Some are in the book talk about search and reunion. Some talk about being angry. Some process I'm happy, and I don't necessarily, I mean, I want to know about my birth family, but I don't necessarily need to meet them. There's such a range of responses.
Yes.
And so you have all these stories, and what it does is they read them, it resonates with them, and maybe if they don't read them, we as parents read them and it resonates with us, and we say
Mhm.
something's going on with our kids and we need to step into that, I guess is what I'm saying. So yeah, that's the twofold reason that I collected these stories for the book, is to help our teenagers process loss or grief or confusion or search or whatever it is that's surfacing, and to help parents like us, you and me, anyone who's caregivers, even, who want to understand the heart of an adoptee. So
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think sometimes kids might be, they don't want to bring it up with us. So maybe there are struggles they're going through. We see it acting out, like you talked about,
yes.
raging or anger. So I learned from my kids going to therapy, sometimes sad comes out as mad.
Yeah.
Sometimes questions come out as mad. Sometimes feeling different or loneliness comes out as mad. So anger is the easiest emotion to deal with, and
Yeah.
so if we see anger, we know there's probably more going on back there, but it could even change. It could be a child that was totally fine with it the year prior suddenly
Yep.
has a lot of questions or a lot
Yeah.
of issues or something that's said. And so I love this going through and reading the stories. And I'm not all the way through it, but the ones I've read so far, it makes you realize like, okay, all of the adoptees have some type of questions in there because it
Yes.
is loss and there is grief. And, going through now, I'm like, this is a great book for us to read together as a family. And then
Mhm.
people could say, like, what do you think about this? What do you
Mhm.
think about that? Because there's some kids, like I mentioned before, my daughter, who will just flat out tell me what's happening, conversation. There's some that never act like there's anything wrong.
Yeah.
That I know there's probably more going on
Ah,
than I think. So I love that these are stories that because they are stories and
yeah.
they're varied, but they're also interesting. They're showing different types of struggles that
Yeah.
they would be a good book, especially since the 7 that we have are the youngest and around the house a lot,
Mhm.
either living here or visiting often. These are good ones that we can read together, or even I have my copy, they have their copy, and be able to talk about it. So I love that.
Yeah, and I think if they don't wanna read it, there's like you said, you can read it. You can take a Post-it note and maybe mark
Mhm.
one or two of the stories, and maybe there will be a time that's right, to talk about it. So I know when my daughter was grieving, or I still think there's still some grief that will always remain. I'm
Yeah.
not ever going to say that doesn't end, but I feel that when I was able to walk with her and to hold her emotions with her and to listen and care for her during that time, and it wasn't like a day. I'm gonna be honest here. For us, it took us a couple years.
Mhm.
Not that it happens every day. I mean, I my daughter was very profound and very had great wisdom to share, and she said, Mom, it comes in waves.
Mhm.
Like sometimes it hits me in waves. So I don't even think they know sometimes when loss or trauma is going to surface. And so I think as parents, we just can be intentional and invite them into this conversation and let them know we get it. There could be some things that surface, and in doing that, I think we normalize it too, so that they feel comfortable and they trust us, and if they trust us, they'll feel cared for and soothed and secure, and that goes a long way in helping them heal as well.
Mhm. That's so good. And I think sometimes it's even things that surprise us, like holidays. Things you should be obvious, but I'm so busy planning for the holiday
Mm,
that I never stop to consider, oh, they're thinking about where is their biological family? How is their
yeah.
biological family celebrating? Is there people thinking of them on the holiday? Because I'm busy, so like for Christmas wrapping presents and
Yeah.
getting all the things together that
Yep.
I'm like, why is this kid have a bad attitude? I'm doing all these things for them or whatever.
Mhm.
But it just even doesn't even make you sometimes makes me at least think about those things that they're processing a lot in different seasons. It
Right.
might not be times that we expect. Or recently, for us, it was vacations
Oh.
because we still have three biological. I mean, not biological. We have three adopted kids that are minors in the house, and so
Mhm.
when we go on vacation, we pay for their vacation.
Yeah.
We had some older kids that paid for their own vacation, but they joined us on vacation. Then other kids are like, "How come they gotta go on vacation?" We're like, "We paid for the ones that are still in our house. The ones that are not in their house that wanted to join us, we went on a cruise. On the cruise, they paid for their own cruise. If you had enough money and wanted to join us, you'd be welcome. But we have 10 children and, now son-in-laws and daughters-in-laws and grandkids. Like, we can't pay for 30 people to go on vacation. So that's part of the conversation I just had recently, which they're just thinking, oh, I'm adopted and they're picking other people. I'm like, no, this is really just a financial thing right
Right.
now. But again, we
We
don't even think
clarified that.
about, yeah,
Yeah.
we were able to talk it through where I didn't even realize until this kid isn't talking to me for a couple days what's really going on is they're just thinking I'm picking and choosing who I'm paying for and taking on vacation.
Right.
So
Right.
it's so interesting, all the things with different
Yeah.
kids, and they all handle it differently. So I'm
Oh, they
curious,
do.
as you were going through and you're talking to and interviewing people, what were things that maybe surprised you? Maybe things that were common that surprised you, or maybe things that you never thought of that maybe they're struggling with?
I was always surprised when I was talking to kids that were scholarshiped
Mhm.
to who knows what school, cheerleader, um, popular people in their, community, whatever school. Um, and they would say, I felt like I didn't belong.
Mhm.
And to me, it, they show every sign of belonging. They're involved in groups, right? And they're doing good things and they're doing healthy things and they're doing teen things. But some things, like nudging at them.
Mhm.
Something's not right, or why do I feel like something like there's you know sometimes they couldn't put it to words. And in the book, I also wrote that too. On the pages, they
Right.
while I was interviewing them, it was almost like me. They were struggling for the right wording as
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
was interviewing them, and it was. it was just interesting to look at them from the outside, and they look like they have it all together.
Yeah.
And then to find out, oh, there's something going on. And a good example is one of the storytellers in the book. Her name is Zuri, and she uses her African name. She was adopted domestically, and she, at 17, just her parents told her that she was uh, a child of date rape. That's a
Mm.
tough topic.
Yeah.
And these parents really stepped up and walked alongside her, and it took several months. Now, Zuri doesn't tell her story to say, like, okay, this is all so problematic for me that I was derailed. She wasn't derailed. She had to go through the natural moves of grieving and understanding and processing loss, also understanding why she was hurting so much. And she wanted to
Mhm.
really understand her birth father better. Because in the story, she says, he's half of me. And so this was quite a complex story, but in the end, and as with all the stories in the book, I find this so fascinating, is that they all had some encouragement to give. Like in her case, she says, don't isolate. Don't keep this stuff to yourself. There are people who want to rally around you. Will you just see this and let them care for you? Because they did this for her, and she kept pushing back, pushing back. And finally, she received it, and it started the healing process. This girl, Zuri, graduated this year from a local Christian college. She invited me to her
Oh,
graduation
wow.
listen to this, to her chapel talk, where she gave the sermon and used her story from the book to tell the rest of them. Doesn't matter where you start, God has a plan for you. And God is
Mm.
so good. And we need to embrace that. And I just, these are some of the stories, like, don't show up later. I get all the backstory because, they contact me, the storytellers contact me and say, hey, I'm getting married, or we're having our first baby, or all these good things. But in the pages, I love it that these storytellers act as mentors, and
Mhm.
they give it, but they also say, hey, here's what I would do differently, or here's what I would recommend for you. They give encouragement and advice, um, and just a connection that says, hey, I get it, and you're not alone. And I think to teenagers and young adults, that's the huge thing, is I'm not alone. I'm not different. There are many of adoptees out there, and we are not alone. This is what we have, and we can process it, and we can grow through it. And it may always be a part of us, but that's okay. It doesn't define us. So, yeah,
That's so good, and I love that. I mean, there's always gonna be some stories that people are gonna relate to more.
yeah.
Just hearing that story, my mom became pregnant at a Halloween party, and I didn't know my biological dad growing up, so I wasn't
Mm,
adopted, but I didn't know my biological dad till I was in my late 20s, and I always thought he knew about me after I found him. He did not know about me, and I always felt like, oh, just like an accident. And
mm,
looking back now, like, I don't think I would have verbalized that as a young
yeah.
child at all. But now that I'm processing it, before I found him, I'm like, okay, I need to lose weight. I need to get a book published. I need to become worthy before I sought
Mm,
out my biological dad, which he was just, yeah, he's a great, nice guy. But it's so interesting that just hearing that story, I'm like, oh, okay, I can relate to that. I think there's so many of us. I mean, there's very few in our world that have the picture perfect one mom,
yeah.
one dad that raised them to adulthood that never have any issues. And so, again, definitely for adoptive teens, definitely for parents who have adopted.
Mhm.
But I think so many people can just read this book and listen to the story or read the stories and be encouraged that, there's either themselves, a family member, a friend. It just helps
Mhm.
us to know how to connect and relate to people and have really good conversations, which I know I've gotten lots of ideas of having conversations with my own kids, but other kids too.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know one things that we want to make sure we talk about is that, when we're bringing these things up, we also have to like process grief and
Mhm.
process loss. So let's
Mhm.
talk about that a little bit. And what are some practical things if all of a sudden we're like, oh, I don't know if I want to bring this book into my family's life because it's going to stir up all the stuff. Well, pretty much
I
the
love
stuff
that.
is already there.
I know.
So let's figure out how to
Let's
process
be
it
real.
and how to let's so
Come on.
why don't you talk a little bit about that of how we can help those that we love process grief and loss and all the things that this may stir up.
I think our relationship, our family relationships are so key, and they make a huge difference. And I have a like a long list I've collected. I'll try to hit a few of them. Um, but one way, or I should say, practical things parents can do is be proactive. It may feel weird at first because you're kind of like entering into uncharted territory, if you will. Would you agree with me?
Mhm.
It's like,
Yes.
oh my gosh, it's something new. And whenever we do something new, we kind of are clunky at it. And I think that's
Mhm.
okay. I'd rather be clunky and do it than not do it at all. Like I don't
Right,
want
yeah.
fear to keep me from, receiving my kids' hearts well. And I wasn't very good at it with my rage child, and I have to tell you this, if I can just backtrack a little bit
Yeah.
to my Nikolai. He, just going through this rage of like, I'm going to say 6 years. He left our house without telling us where he was going to go, and
Mhm. Mhm.
you know, I wish I understood where his rage was coming at the time. I was very grace filled and kind. I was also trying to receive him, but it was very difficult because I couldn't quite figure it out. I mean, we had found his birth family. I was doing all the things right, but he just wasn't ready to receive it. It was almost like he had an attachment disorder of sorts. I'm just going to call it
Mhm.
that for now. We
Yeah.
never had him
Yeah.
diagnosed. But in that experience, I needed to go back and repair whatever it is he was understanding about us or that time frame. And so a year and a half ago, I started inviting him for Monday lunches. He had
Oh,
lunch.
wow.
He had Mondays off. He was 22, and I said, "Hey, would you like to go to lunch with me?" It's like, "Sure." That was about it. So we met up at the Mission Barbecue, and he was 15 minutes late, sat on his phone for about the 15 minutes he stayed there, ate his barbecue, and he left. There were no words.
Mhm.
I kept doing this every Monday. Every Monday, I let him select, where do you want to go to eat? Slow and steady, the ice started melting. And I'm telling you this because sometimes we can't expect things to happen in a second or in a minute. It's not a microwave sort of moment. This
Mhm.
is the crock pot going on strong. And I'm at a year and a half into Mondays with Cola. His nickname is Cola. Reminds me of Mondays with Morty.
Yeah.
Mondays with Cola. And now he stays for about an hour. We have vivid conversations. Sometimes when his belly is full and I can tell that he's comfortable, I come back around carefully and I say, I know you don't want to revisit the past. I just want to tell you, I am sorry I wasn't good at holding your emotions well. And I
Mhm.
want you to know that I wish I could have done better. And you would not believe the healing that has come into his
Mhm.
heart because of this time that I've invested in reminding him that, we love you. This is your rage, your sorrow, all the things did not change that. And it still brings tears to my eyes. And I look forward to every time I'm with him, not because I'm going to go and question him or be this investigative person trying to figure out what's going on, but more I just let it organically surface so
Yeah.
that, or I look for the right timing. And he just turned 24. So it's one of those things, I think I'm getting those numbers right. It's one of those things that we just get better at. My clunky has gotten better and better and better. And I think
Mhm.
it's because my heart is really understanding where all this is rooted, and it's rooted in loss,
Yes, it is, yeah.
as you know. So,
I love that. That's a beautiful story. And with our girls too, we have one that as soon as she turned 18, went and lived with her biological mom. She's from foster care, and we're like, it was a really hard situation when they got taken away, and it was a really hard situation after she moved back. And there's been
mhm,
years where she just broke off communication. And
mhm,
whenever one of the other kids was talking to her, I'm like, tell her that I still
mm,
have her birthday presents here, or tell her I know that I'm blocked, but she can call me. And,
yep,
and sure enough,
love that.
out of the blue, she would do that, and then we would talk, and it would go well, and then it would be silence again, and
Yep.
then 6 months later, it'd come around again, and it'd be silence again, and there'll be, like, 3 days in a row, and it's like, okay, it's
Mhm,
like, we're here, and we love her, and just as like with
mhm,
the other kids, and it's like, they don't have it figured out. Why would we, why would we have any expectations of, "Oh, okay, if I
yeah,
do this, they're gonna do this." They're just, sometimes a whirlwind of
yeah,
emotions inside,
right,
and it's hard enough for any child this day and
mhm,
age to
yeah,
deal with life,
right,
let alone when there's pain and loss and multiple voices from other people commenting or whatever, whatever it is. So what are some things that we can practically do to help
yeah.
young people?
Yeah, and I think this works, for adoptive kids, for foster to adopt kids, and for anyone. I mean, any parent. I do this thing called lattes, lunches, and love languages, and it goes back to your guest you
Mm.
had on an earlier podcast, that new book that is Love Languages for Adopted
Yes. Yep. Yeah.
Kids. Oh my goodness, is that needed? I
Yeah.
love that. They should get that. I said the word should. You should get that. Um,
Multiple books. You can just go to your Amazon cart and add these books.
just start clicking away. Well, because I think like when we set up some sort of routine, something practical, like I don't know about your kids, but couple of my kids love the latte, love the Starbucks or whatever. And if we can
Mhm.
sit down together over a coffee, and they started drinking coffee or these lattes, they're fun drinks when they were like 15, 16.
Yeah.
That's a treat. That was a treat for them to be taken out and do that. And you don't have to do that specifically, but I was just working with the alliteration, right? But
Yep.
lunch, whatever. But once um, what their love language is, and if it's going out to eat, or maybe it's doing a biking activity, or um, maybe it's just sitting quietly and watching a movie together. You're starting to build that relationship of trust. It means we have
Mhm.
to put down the phones, that we have to put down a lot of stuff in order to be intentional like that. But for any kid, they crave it. They really do. They don't show us that. Again, they're
Mhm.
stealthy. Like I said in the beginning, they don't show us that. And I get it. God's kind of wired them to be independent and start working towards adulthood, but they really don't want to walk that alone. They want our
Right.
support. So I would recommend, just practically, be proactive and build like some sort of routine into your relationship.
Mhm.
It doesn't have to be daily. It could be once a week or once a month even is huge. And for our kids, for teenagers who have gone through trauma or loss, I just feel like it, and I'm confirmed by my daughter, so I shouldn't say I feel like it. I've heard this from several adoptees that it comes in waves. They
Mm.
don't know when to
Yeah.
expect it. So I think just us checking in from time to time,
Mhm.
um, just lets them know that we're there for them. And if the wave does hit, we're not going to be surprised and we're going to be okay with that. And we're strong enough. We can walk with you when emotions are stirred or when you have questions. And that leads me to the next thing. We need to learn to listen well.
Yeah.
If we don't listen well, if we're always offering the answers or confirming things that aren't true, I mean, we just need to receive what they're saying. And I feel like a lot of my posture has been, especially with my daughter who has grieved her birth father, I've been on the floor a lot, like laying
Yes.
on the floor with a 17-year-old, laying on the floor,
Mhm.
sitting next to them on the bed, whatever it is, just practically speaking, you know, that posture shows like openness. It's a community. It offers openness. I recommend ramping up the hugs. I had
Yep.
one storyteller in the book just say, "My parents stopped hugging me,"
Oh, and
and
when
I'm
they
like,
get that older age, we almost think like, "Oh, this is gonna be awkward." But no, that's when they need hugs the most, when they get that older
"Yeah,"
age and
and I think, "Oh, I, all right. There's my takeaway from the book. I'm going to ramp up my hugging."
Mhm,
Not like I'm gonna do it all the time where it looks like it's not in
mhm.
authentic. I want it to
Right.
be authentic, right? And I want them to
Mhm,
know I'm authentic in that. Definitely, I would start early on all this. I would start with preteens and teens and start a rhythm. Get a rhythm in your family of
mhm,
receiving their emotions because you're not going to be. You could chalk this all up to being teen behavior. You can like sweep it under the rug and look the other way and say, "Well, we'll ride the wave." But I think in the long run, we'll have stronger relationship with our kids. They will have strong relationship with us, and they will be stronger individuals for it. For us having
mhm.
made that a priority in our lives. So let me
Right.
see. Was there one more? Do I have time for one more?
Yeah,
Oh,
no,
yeah.
you feel free to share one more.
Yeah, and the apology is big. I'm into apology,
Mhm.
saying I'm sorry or I didn't get it, I missed it. Wow, where was I when you said that? I totally messed up. However, whatever language you want to use.
Yep.
Oh my goodness, that is so heart healing. I would highly recommend that. Also, if you've got teens who aren't communicating with other teens that are adopted somehow, seek out local groups. That's on the rise. We're trying to get that movement going throughout the country to get more teen and young adult groups together so that they can have this community, that they can have this camaraderie and share things together and see that they're not alone in their thoughts, experiences, or their feelings. You can find those teen groups. Again, either through your church or there's a lot of them that are done virtually through different organizations out there that are have like counseling backgrounds, therapy backgrounds, that type of thing. um, I know, and I've offered a discussion guide on my website that may be helpful.
I love
Sometimes
that.
we don't have language that we want know the language to use with our kids, so there's some or questions to ask them, so there's some help there. And yeah, I think those are the big ones that come to mind. But all of this, the overarching point of it is that we're going to communicate. You are not alone. You
Mhm.
have others surrounding you, and we're going to walk this out with you. So,
Yeah, that's so good. I think just being aware, like you're talking about,
oh yeah,
like if you mention coffee out, do they get excited about that? If
yeah,
you offer a hug, do they lean in? And they might not lean in to begin with. They
no,
might be like, "Oh, what's happening here?"
yeah,
But also note that what things really light them up or brighten their eyes or that they
mhm,
enjoy doing together. Outings out, shopping. My girls two of my adopted girls, we love going to like antique stores and walking around and looking at things. They love any time together. And I
Mhm.
think we get so busy. And of course, all kids need time, but I think some kids just need the reminders that they're worth our time and might need a little more
Mm.
time.
I
And
love
I think
that.
that's an important thing. So
Mhm.
such good things, and I love the stories. And I think again, this is a
Mm.
perfect book to read aloud to families. So where can readers go to get more information about you and your book, and then this study guide or discussion guide that you talked about too?
Yeah. So to find the book, definitely your library, ask them to order it. It's a great way to save money.
Hmm.
Just get to the library and say, I'd
Yeah.
like to get this book. And they're usually very accommodating. I'm from Michigan. They're very accommodating in Michigan.
Yes.
So I would imagine also, any bookstore, your Barnes and Noble, any online, Amazon, christianbooks.com, anything like that. You can find the book. I have a website. It's susantebos.com. It's really simple. That's where those discussion guides are.
And then how do you spell your last name so for those?
Yeah, it's TEB as in boy, OS as in Sam. So
All
Susan,
right.
SUSAN. Yeah,
Mhm.
susantebos.com. I'm on Instagram at Susan TeBos Writer, but I tend to post more on a little old Facebook, old fashioned Facebook,
Yes.
susantebos.author. And so that's where I tend to be more active. So, yeah, and people can interact with me there as well. So,
Well, thank you, Susan. This has been a great conversation.
ah,
It's as I'm sitting here, I'm like, I need to text this child. I need to check in on this child. But
me
we've
too.
adopted seven. It's like I'm trying to, but also I also always pray. And I think this is good. Lord, show me who needs that
Mhm.
extra bit of love, attention, care before it blows up, before we're in the angry moment and realizing that
Right,
they need this. So
right.
yeah,
I
so
love
but thank
that.
you so much for being here, and I love the book, highly recommend it, I'll continue to
Mm,
recommend it, but thank you for all that you do.
thank you.